Canucks win. It was starting to look like we'd seen with Toronto and the last game with Calgary, where the Canucks started off incredibly well. In the first couple periods, it seemed like Calgary was being let back in the game, but the Canucks held strong to finish them off. At one point, the Canucks were on pace for 60 shots. Second period, 10 minutes to go. They had 32 shots. It took Calgary, I think, I can't even remember when they finally got their first shot. The second period, this was awful. Ending that first period, Edler took a really crushing penalty for the Canucks. His second hooking penalty. He's been taking a lot of penalties, and I think it's because they've just been overplaying him. And he's in a role where everyone, it seems like every defenseman on the Canucks is playing one pay grade higher than they should be. And you're going to have mixed results because of it. But overall, the Canucks looked really good. I mean, let's go through the lines. What they had here. Pettersson looked really dangerous with Miller and Brock. They had a lot of great shifts, a lot of great chances. Pettersson, his first shift, he had tons of pressure. Was really happy to see that. The Höglander, Bo Horvat, Pearson line looked great. Pearson, I thought, looked even more dangerous than usual. He had a bit more jump. He was moving the puck in. I mean, Höglander was just fantastic. In the third period, he's coming up on the net on the short side, and there's two Flames defensemen coming at him. And you think, there's nowhere for him to go. And he just waits that extra second. Flame defenseman moves laterally across. He sort of delays, cuts to the middle, has that, rips that backhand, but unfortunately dings it off the crossbar. He was fantastic. I love Höglander. I think he's been consistently the best Canuck forward of the year, of the season. Sutter had the empty net goal. He was fine. You know, he's exactly what you can expect from him, where he didn't take any bad penalties, he didn't have any terrible giveaways, and he got the empty net goal. That was one of the several steals that Eriksson had. To get that empty netter, Eriksson was watching them on the sideboards. The Flames had a desperate pass out to center ice to try to get a final shot in that last 90 seconds with the goalie pulled and down by a goal. Eriksson read the play, big steal, out to Sutter. Sutter made no mistake, scored the empty netter to make it 3-1. Beagle, I thought, had a pretty good game. He was moving pretty fast. He was showing a lot of toughness at the end. There was a bit of a scrum at the end. Did you see Tkachuk just grab Edler and do that little rabbit punch? He's such a little piece of shit, Tkachuk. I mean, the kind of guy you'd want to have on your team, although sometimes he has his little temper tantrums and you can kind of see his teammates move away from him. But he was just rabbit punching Edler, and Edler was playing the old veteran. Probably didn't hurt. I think he was probably waiting to see if this guy was going to get some kind of discipline, but it's sort of that gray area where the game has just ended and they're probably not going to have any sort of, I mean, they're not going to hand out a lot of penalties unless you do something really bad. They're just going to let them kind of tussle around. But, you know, Beagle's a tough guy. He's obviously $1 million more than you want to pay him, but I liked his chemistry with Mott earlier in the year and in the playoffs, and he won a ton of faceoffs. The Canucks were just winning every single faceoff, and that contributed to how many bloody shots they got to start this game off with. Gaudette, I've been ripping on Gaudette all season, ended a bit in the playoffs. He had mentioned that he had some kind of digestion issue that was keeping his weight down. I think he was under 180 pounds for most of the season, and he said he finally played at 180 pounds in the last game. And he's looked better, he's looked faster, he's looked stronger. I still think his overall hockey awareness is not great. He tends to not know where to go. He has the speed, he has the tools, he can deke, he can shoot, but he's not really going to be knocking anybody off the puck defensively, and he tends to just not know what to do in the forecheck. So could he be a guy that is the sort of like a Kyle Wellwood, where he's the least talented player on a talented line? Because I don't think he really works in the bottom six unless you could have a really great couple like supporting cast with him. Maybe if this team still had it to Foley or something similar to that, or when Podkolzin comes in, if you could load them up. But I think Green is always going to be wary of putting Gaudette in a line that's not really strong. He always has Gaudette with Sutter, and who did he have him with? Roussel. You know, Roussel didn't take any penalties. I'm not a fan of Roussel. I don't think he's that fast. I think He rarely ever gets the puck on forechecks. He has some giveaways, and he tends to just try to justify his role in the team by becoming an instigator, and it doesn't really tend to do much. And maybe that has to do without there being a crowd. I was watching an interview with Maxime Lapierre, and Lapierre said he felt bad for Roussel because he said, I played that role too, and as an instigator, you need the crowd for it to feel like a show. And without the crowd, it makes it a lot more tough. And Roussel got hit. I think he got hit with a puck. A lot of players in the Canucks getting hit by friendly fire. And he went off with a bit of blood. Virtanen, he had a decent game. He had a game where there were some moments that were really strong, and there were some moments that I thought were just terrible. He was flying down the left wing at one point for a sharp angle chance. There were a lot of sharp angle and far away chances on Markstrom. Kevin Bieksa pointed it out in one of the intermission breaks that the Canucks were not getting any greasy goals. They didn't have anybody in the front of the net. And when you saw the Flames, who was it? Enholm, the Swedish guy, Lindholm. He was in the front of the net, causing havoc in front of Demko, cross-checking the hell out of Edler. And, that kind of stuff makes a difference. So Virtanen looked fast. I mean, he could do that. We know that he can take the puck and he can skate really fast. But it's sort of what you do with it. It's like when you watch Höglander, he can make that extra move, or he can have some patience, and he sort of puts the defense on their heels because they're wondering, what the hell is this guy going to do? And they respect him already. There was oh my God, yeah. So they were in the D zone and they had numbers, and this is when Calgary was finally starting to get back into the game after the Canucks dominated for the first two periods. It was about halfway through the second, and the Flames were pressuring. Virtanen takes the puck behind the net and just kind of lackadaisical, skates, doesn't really have his head up, just soft dump to nobody, turns it over. The Flames get another quick, bang, bang, couple chances. It's stuff like that leads to goals. When you're being pressured, this is when you need to shine. And he's a guy that can stick handle, and I praised him a lot in the playoffs where he was really able to do some great transitioning moves, and because he has that built-in skill, he should be better at that, but it comes down to just awareness in the defensive zone and the offensive zone. Third period. Oh yeah, in the third period, Virtanen gets into the Calgary zone, and he does a little between-the-legs drop pass to nobody. And again, another giveaway. Under 10 minutes in the third, tied at 1. Jake did have a big, strong rush for a good chance, but no luck there. So he didn't take any penalties. Luckily, Calgary didn't score, but I would say that he gave away more dangerous scoring chances than he produced. He looks flashy, but when you really think about what is he producing and what is he giving up, I think I'm not an analytics guy. I've never really dove into it. I just watch, and I would imagine that what we're watching is the stuff that would show up in analytics, but I don't know. If you know better, please let me know in the chat. Louis Eriksson. If Louis can be on the fourth line and play solid and have if he can play above average defense on a fourth line and have the odd pass here and there like he did tonight, and he actually even had a few offensive chances. I think that is far better than what you're getting out of Gaudette most nights, far better than what you're getting out of Jake, and definitely a lot more than you're getting out of Roussel. For me, out of the Zach McEwen, Roussel, Gaudette, Virtanen, and Eriksson club, I put McEwen on top. God, Gaudette and Jake, it's a real trade-off. I don't really like either of them. I think Jake maybe gives up less chances. Gaudette and Jake are kind of tied, and then Roussel definitely on the bottom. And then I'd put Eriksson above Gaudette and Jake. Yeah, I'd go Zach. Yeah, Zach, Louis, Jake and Gaudette are tied, and then Roussel I don't really want to see play anymore. He's no good. He stopped taking terrible penalties. That's a good thing. I think and I was worried because he wasn't scoring and he was a scratch a few times. So I thought he was going to come in and really try to make a statement and get in people's faces. And that's when he really gets into penalty trouble. Edler. it was a real shame to see because the Canucks were so bloody good in that first period. And he took this hooking penalty right at the end. Like, by the time they whistled it down, it was about 1 second left in the first period. And he was complaining to the ref that as soon as Tkachuk felt the stick, he clamped down, did the chicken wing, and embellished it. But you shouldn't have your stick there anyway. I think Edler just has that so ingrained when you were able to get away with a bit more of that light stick work. And he's playing far more minutes than he should be. I mean, the guy is a great player, but on a great team, he would be a real solid second pairing or third pairing guy, and you would love him. And I think that he does offer a lot, but the penalties are really frustrating, when you don't need to take them. And he took 2 of the exact same, so he's not learning. He's just trying to keep up. And I like his playmaking. I like his composure. I like his hitting. I like his leadership. I love Edler and his whole career for what he's done for the Canucks. And it's purely them just not having the defensive depth and Green knowing that I can rely on Edler. Because you can't rely on Myers to play big minutes. He had some big moments this game, but they're more offensive moments. Although I will say, it was tied at 1 in the third. The Flames were pressuring, and Myers took this Flame player that was sitting in front of the net and just manhandled him out of there without taking a penalty. That's what you want to see. That's like Chara stuff. That's Pronger stuff. If Myers could do that every shift, be a dominant physical presence in the D zone without taking a penalty, and add that to his repertoire of good breakout passes, and he's so confident in the offensive zone. He looks like a forward. When he's in the offensive zone, he kind of gets this attitude about him. He kind of bends over. He's hustling in. He had the winning goal tonight. Levy, he won a few battles early. And he covered Höglander on a bad pass as well. So Levy had a nice game. But until Levy proves himself as a solid second pairing guy, Edler's going to be taking those big minutes because Hughes and Ben, there's only so much Hughes can do. Ben is doing great for who he is and the money you pay him. You should be happy with him as a 7th defenseman or as a almost solid third pairing guy. And he's playing big minutes, man. Let's see. What did Ben play tonight? Jody Ben, 17 minutes on the ice. That's a hell of a lot. They're asking a lot, and he's not crumbling. Levy, 15 minutes. So actually spread out the ice time pretty well. Levy, 15 minutes. Way to go. Myers, 22. Schmid, 22. Schmidt, like every game, doesn't look extremely comfortable, but doesn't make a lot of terrible mistakes and makes a lot. He's sort of like a quantity of solid plays. And I think overall, you're better off with him than without him. And I think that he handles playing. He played the most minutes tonight out of all of them. Man, Hughes was actually only at 17 minutes because they didn't really have very much power play time, right? And Edler with 22:52. So that was your top pairing, Edler and Schmid, with Myers right behind them. All right. Man, Demko looked pretty good. He had to stay pretty focused throughout. That must be pretty tough where you're not really getting any shots. And then all of a sudden, you've got to stop some point-blank shots. Because I'd say that, even though the Canucks, at one point the Canucks had like 32 shots to 7. It was, the Flames had some of the better chances. To start off, Markstrom, he stopped everything. The Canucks were out shooting them 8-0. He looked unbeatable, and you could see the Canucks starting to tense up a bit. All right, let's go through these goals. So the first Canucks goal came, they had 29 shots. It was a Hughes goal. Miller had heavy pressure on the forecheck, which caused a floating Calgary pass. And it was one of these passes because Miller went in there and he was like sticking him so good on the forecheck. The Calgary Flames defenseman put it out there. It didn't go far enough to get to the forward. It wasn't slow enough to get to the guy before that. They hesitated. Hughes pounced on that, burst through, did that little fake pass. He made, what's his name, Valimaki look like a moron. He looked so embarrassed after and just roofed it. That was nice. What a shot. He's got such a great wrist shot. If he was a winger, man, he'd be really dangerous because he's super fast, super shifty, and he's got a hell of a wrist shot. He's got a pretty good slapper. But that wrist shot, he's accurate. Canucks are feeling good. I mean, finally they're rewarded for this avalanche of shots and control of play. But Calgary scored really quickly after that with Bennett. As soon as Bennett scored, I thought, oh man, those rumors of Bennett for Virtanen, if only they were true, or if only they would have came through. Pettersson actually falls down covering Bennett. And it only takes a second of Pettersson sliding on his butt on the ice, going the wrong way. Bennett finds the hole, ends up with the puck in the slot, and scores. That's a pretty good spot to be in. I mean, you put basically anybody in that spot, they got a pretty good chance of scoring. I bet you Gaudette could score from there. And then the Canucks eventually broke it in the third period with 5 minutes left. Myers was all over the offensive zone in this shift. He was moving the puck. He was almost single-handedly tiring out the Flames line. The Flames finally got the puck out, and they were so exhausted, but they didn't get the puck out enough. And Myers held it, and he knew that these Flames are tired. He waited for all the Canucks to come out. He pushed back in. He was sort of like, when like a predatory wolf or coyote is tracking down their prey, and they know they're tired, and they just go in for the kill, and the deer sort of gives up, and they're like, all right, just kill me. And Myers knifed through them, went far right, got Markstrom moving, wired that shot. I think it went through Markstrom's leg, and it sort of bounced through the 5-hole and went in. They gave the goal to Pettersson. First they called it on the ice, Myers, and then in the building they gave it to Pettersson, but they showed the replay after, and Pettersson didn't actually touch it. But if it needed help to get through, Pettersson would have been there to make it happen. That was a great play. I mean, that's what you like out of Myers. He's obviously paid too much because he doesn't provide enough defense, and that's what he's on the ice doing most of the time. But stuff like that, I mean, that's big. You know, if you're in the playoffs or something, and a moment like this happens where it's tied, Calgary was coming back in this third period, and the Canucks having lost, 6 in a row, and many games like this where they played excellent in the first 2 periods and then just collapsed in the third. Not necessarily like the Canucks themselves collapsed, but we're just overwhelmed by a team that decided to try. Like how that's got to feel demoralizing. We give everything we can. I mean, at one point, the Flames were without 2 of their centers. I think Backlund or Granlund, whichever one, the Michael guys, went down early. I think Granlund. And then, what was it? Endholm as well. They were playing without. So, I mean, the Canucks should have been a rout at that point, but Markstrom is just so bloody good. And the Flames are good too. And they were feisty. So that's what you want to see from Myers, and that's big stuff, but you just don't want to have him playing too much. And him playing 22:50, you got lucky tonight. But on another night when you're playing a better team, he can get exposed playing 22:50. And then with 90 seconds left, the Flames, with the goalie pulled, Louis Eriksson with a steal. A steal can be a little thing, but when you pass it over and you have that anticipation and Sutter can pop it in, it becomes a big thing. So it was a pretty good game in terms of entertainment. I think I was pretty entertained for sort of the first half, and then it kind of started breaking down a little bit, and it was quite a lot of back and forth. But I was happy with how the Canucks played. There were a lot of dangerous chances. Almost all of them played pretty well tonight. I was only really pissed off at Jake a few times. Höglander had another monster game. Horvat looked a little more dangerous. Pearson looked more dangerous than usual. Roussel got hurt, so I didn't have to watch him play too much. And Demko played great too. So they're playing in 2 more days. Demko with a .947 save percentage tonight. He's got to like that. These guys probably don't care about bringing their numbers up. They don't care about numbers. They just want to win. How about Markstrom, though? He had a .956 save percentage in the loss. 43 saves. The guy had 32 saves in the second period. This is outrageous. Backlund, that's his name. Backlund, like Bob Backlund. He only played .427 tonight. A. Smith A. Hey, man. How you doing? What'd you think of the game? I'm just about to wrap up, but if you want to chat about the game a little bit, I'll stick around. I saw that Aquilini tweeted, "Oh, I'm really committed to these guys, Green and Benning." I think he is. I don't think he wants to spend any more money. He showed up and has really showed up this year. Who are we talking about? I can't remember. Were we talking about Backlund? Yeah, he showed up and has really showed up this year. Who? You missed most of it? You missed, I don't know if you're going to watch it again, but the first period was pretty exciting. I mean, the Canucks were just all over the Flames. Oh, Markstrom. Yeah, there's this wonderful lag. Markstrom is unbelievable. When you watch him, when I watch the Canucks give everything they have and look really good, and their best players are looking dangerous, and usually there's this feeling of, okay, we're pressuring, and the players almost get they get more amped up because they know that the goal is coming. But the thing with Markstrom is that he is so calm, and he makes it look so easy the way he's moving around. He's just like this cardboard cutout of a goalie that doesn't go out of position, He's not one of those goalies that goes out of position and has to make an acrobatic save. He's just like a cardboard cutout, like a robot moving around. And you go, oh yeah, no problem. Never leaves any gaps above him. You can't score. If it's on the short side, he's not freaking out. Are you going to pass? Although he moved when Hughes faked him on the pass, but it was a rush and there was a scramble in the zone. But my point was that Markstrom can make, you can see the Canucks after, the eighth big save in a row where they're getting deflated and they're like, what are we going to do to beat this guy? And then they start making that extra pass and they're looking for the perfect shot. Canucks make many goalies look good over the years. Man, that's true. I mean, the Canucks overall, their lifetime record is not good. And they do tend to make teams look pretty fast. I mean, I always bring this one up. You remember when the Canucks lost to the Flames in the playoffs, and they made the Flames look amazing when Ferland was there, and you thought, wow, this team looks so good. And then the Flames went to the next round and just got destroyed. And you think, oh, they weren't that good. We were just really, really bad. I think that was like the last Willie D year. Structures from the Canucks goaltending coaches. He's become extremely good. Yeah, I forget his name, but I loved hearing Kevin Woodley talk about him. About that, what do you always call it? He always calls it the reverse push move. Kevin Woodley's so good. I loved hearing him on Halford and Bruff. I love hearing those kind of analysts that not only have played the game, but have studied the game in a way where Dave Tomlinson was great at this too. And Kevin Biek says, breaking down the movements and the little things that the players are doing to make those things happen. Because it's all about those little things. You can hear a lot of stuff like, oh, they're not working hard. They're not winning puck battles. You don't just win puck battles by trying really hard. If it was just who tried the hardest, then anybody could do it. It has to be a balance of skill and effort, but knowing how to apply that skill. And yeah, Markstrom has been, you can see how he definitely artificially inflated the Canucks record last year. And Tanev too. I mean, those two guys, you saw that goal where the puck was left in the crease and Tanev just sweeps it out. And that has nothing to do with trying hard. It's Tanev not panicking and knowing when to get the puck in there, when to get the stick in there to move that puck out. It's all about the no panic. I'll always remember when Lemieux came back from retirement, and in his first game, his first shift, they had an isolated camera on Lemieux. And he gets onto the ice, and all he does is he just kind of coasts, and then he scores. And it's not because he was trying really hard. It's because he's watching the game move. And he knows where to go. And, and has that vision and timing. You don't know how much you agree with Markstrom inflating things. You think Tanev loss was the big key that has messed things up. Well, I'll definitely... Yeah, you know what? I think you got a really good point. Because the thing with Markstrom is that Demko's pretty good. So... And even Holtby sometimes has been good. But we've seen Demko be as good as Markstrom. And we've also seen Markstrom have games where he would let in the odd weak goal. And it would kind of rattle him. He'd play an amazing game and he'd let in one weak goal. So I think that the drop from Markstrom to Demko, when Demko is on his game, you're not losing as much. But you're right, because when you have Tanev out of the lineup, you've now shifted everything. And you've made it way more difficult on Hughes, where Tanev did so much for Hughes to teach him about the NHL game, to be in the right spot. You can't just put a defensive defenseman there and go, okay, there you go. Here's Ben, a guy that sometimes can't even make the roster and is now playing top minutes. I don't know if you were here when I was talking about the minutes. Jordy Ben played 17 minutes, 19 seconds. I mean, he's playing top pairing, top 4 minutes with Hughes, and he's doing admirably with it. But you're really putting a lot on him. So when Tanev is there, it takes the pressure off of everybody. Demko will be the better goalie in the long run, you think. Markstrom will have 2, maybe 3 years at this level. Yeah. That's something I've mentioned before, is that you can't judge the Toffoli, Markstrom, Tanev signings on the first year. The reason you don't sign all those guys is because of the length of the contract. So, like you say, you think Markstrom will have 2, maybe 3 years at this level. Oh yeah, because Markstrom... I mean, goalies are unpredictable. And Markstrom took a long time to get to this level. And you have no idea where he's going to go with it after. And Tanev, too. I mean, Tanev... I love Tanev. And we saw what he did for Hughes, and we saw how much Hughes has been struggling. Where he's already been a guy that gets pretty consistently injured each year. And he's, and he plays a rough game. He blocks shots. The guy's got 3 teeth left. And he loves it. I love that hockey smile. But you can't judge the Markstrom and Tanev stuff now. And even Toffoli. You judge it in 3 years when you're wondering how good are those guys for the money, and how would we have made room on the team not having to give that money out? Well, exactly. He's not young. We'll see what Toffoli does. I saw an article somewhere, I think it was on TSN. They were talking about the Montreal Canadiens scoring is dried up. No, it's because the Canadiens played 3 games against the Canucks, and the Canucks were melting down, and Toffoli knew how to score on them. Tanev was such a heart and soul player for the Canucks. You really wish we had kept him. Me too. I thought the Markstrom contract was too long and too unpredictable, and you have Demko, so you would have to trade Demko to keep Markstrom. And I mean, after those, what was it? It was like 3 games against the Vegas Knights. In the playoffs, I watched those games with Demko. I could not believe it. My mouth was open the whole time. I'm just thinking, I don't know if I've ever seen a goalie play like this before. Maybe Luongo a few times in the playoffs, where he went to another level. That's where I saw it, and I thought, okay, you can move on. you can move on from Markstrom. If Demko didn't have that, I probably would have said, well, just trade Demko. Everybody wants a young goalie and keep Markstrom, right? Oh yeah, the Schneider Luongo thing. I mean, it eventually worked out. They got Markstrom for Luongo. They got Horvat for Schneider. They ended up with none of them. Oh, yeah. They insulted Luongo, benched him, and then ended up giving up on Schneider. Schneider had a really rough break, man. Bad injuries, stuck in Jersey on their worst years. I feel really bad for him. But goalies you can't predict. I mean, a goalie can be trash one year and then they figure it out the next year. It's such a mental game. They're like golfers. But exactly, I mean, back to your point about Tanev being such a heart and soul guy and keeping him. If they would have just bought out Sutter, and what else could they have done? I guess if you didn't get Schmidt and you would have just kept Tanev. I mean, if he signed for that with Calgary, you'd think he would have signed for less with Vancouver. If they would have talked to him. But Benning is... Benning just blew it with Tanev. Not talking to him at all and then crawling back to him. Desperate at the end when he couldn't get Oliver Ekman-Larsson. What are you trying to do getting this guy? Ekman-Larsson is so overpaid. I wonder how much of that comes from Aquilini, who just wants the flashy new thing. Your team's biggest problem is you have too many big contracts and you need to worry about how to pay Pettersson and Hughes and Besser, who's going to need a $7 million qualifying. And you're trying to get Ekman-Larsson when you have Tanev right here, who probably would have stayed here for like $4.5 mil, $5 mil, probably 5 years. He would have been really nice to have. Because you can just... He's fast, man. I saw him outskate a few Canucks in the last couple games. He can move. And he just gets you out of the zone. And he's one of those defensemen that can come up with those lifeline defensive plays. You know, a really sad thing no one talks about, Markstrom leaving ends the trade tree going all the way back to the late 90s Trevor Linden trade. So Trevor Linden for what? Bertuzzi and Brian McCabe? And then Brian McCabe becoming the Sedins? And then Bertuzzi becoming Luongo. And then Luongo becoming Markstrom. And then Markstrom... Right. And then Markstrom becoming... nothing. How many things has Benning just let become nothing? Oh, it's nothing now. Because we don't know whether we're making the playoffs or not. We don't know if we have one of the worst records in the league, or if we should be trading all of our draft picks away. Okay. McCabe and Rutu. Yeah, the Brian McCabe, and then the big Burke wizardry to get the Sedins. That was a miracle that he managed to... He had the balls and the skill to pull off getting the two Sedins and avoiding... Who was it that year? DiPietro? No, Patrick Stefan. Patrick Stefan went first, and then the two Sedins. Oh my God, and the fourth pick was Pavel Brendel, who looked good. Yeah, Patrick Stefan. Remember him going in on that empty net and looking back and showing off and losing the puck? And it went back the other way and they scored? Yeah. Patrick Stefan from the Long Beach Ice Dogs. And Pavel Brendel for the Rangers. Both of them total busts. That was a real bad draft year. The Sedins, I remember, they really benefited from the lockout, because you had the lockout, and when they came back, they totally changed how they called the game, and the Sedins were able to really benefit from it. Because if you can't just, because the Sedins aren't super fast and they're not super strong. But if you're not allowed to just hook and clutch and grab and trip them, there's not really much you can do. I loved how they could fall to their knees. Like, they just were so bouncy. They expected the check. They do that little back check. You saw Edler. Tonight, Edler did a reverse check, and he elbowed and what's this guy's name? He's a Swedish player in Calgary. He's one of the best players. And I can't pronounce his bloody name. Lindholm. Lindholm. I think that was a bad draft year. And then the one where Milbury, who already had Luongo, and I think Chara, and he traded Luongo and Jokinen for Oleg Kavasha and to trade up so he could take DiPietro number 1 or something. You think they're strong? But yeah, they're slow. The lockout allowed them to grow without Vancouver pressure. Yeah. They kind of lost the baby fat. They learned the game better. And just people weren't able to clutch and grab. Like, I was watching the 1998 Nagano games. I was watching the final play where Trevor Linden scores the lone Canadian goal. I think the Czech Republic was up 1-0 gold medal game. And the amount of clutching and grabbing in illegal play is unbelievable. I think I'm getting some of that confused with Yashin, Luongo, and DiPietro. There were so many bad Milbury moves. Giving up Luongo so he could draft DiPietro. And then because he drafts DiPietro, he doesn't take Heatley or Gaborik. Moron. And then ending up with Yashin and getting rid of Chara? Dude. Ugh. He's such an idiot. And then he stayed on TV for so long. He had Stahl in New York? No way. Sometimes I watch Pettersson and I think, is he going to end up like... Is he going to be a Pavel Datsyuk? And be able to lead a team to a cup and be a legend and keep developing and just become this wizard? Or is he going to end up like Eric Stahl? Where they have a big... They start off strong. And then they kind of peter down a bit. Well, he could have drafted Stahl. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's a lot of things Milbury should have done. It's amazing that you can keep working. Or like Paul Stastny. They come out and they have a big year. They're skilled. They kind of peter out a bit. He seems to be struggling to get back to where he was. Peter down. I love him. I love his creativity. I love his confidence. I like that he wants to keep getting better. I mean, the guy didn't have that shot that he has now. But, I think it's a confidence thing, and it's an overall systems thing. I don't think you can, unless you're McDavid or Draisaitl. Hockey's not basketball, right? It's all about how is your team playing and the momentum and the movement of it. So you think he's for real? I thought, after the first 2 years, I thought for sure he's going to be maybe one of the best players the Canucks have ever had. Probably after Bure. And I was thinking he might be better than the Sedins when it's all said and done. He's already started off better than them. He'll be the best player in Canucks history if he stays. I mean, if you can keep a core together of Demko, solid, above-average goalie. Man, Demko looks like when he gets scored on, he kind of freaks me out a bit. It's not that he shows no emotion. It's not that he shows a lot of emotion. He just kind of gets this sort of dead stare and kind of smiles a bit. But if you can have a guy like Hughes, if Hughes can become your Brian Leetch, your Scott Niedermayer, that is so important. When you see how hard it is to acquire defensemen through free agency that can still make a difference. I mean, you look at San Jose, they're paying Erik Karlsson, I think, $11 million cap hit. And he's just been bad. But I mean, the whole team's kind of been bad too, right? They've sort of lost they held onto their core for a long time, lost both Joes, and they're totally lost now. Except they're stuck paying this guy $11 million. But if you can get, so I mean, my point was that it's so hard to find great defensemen, and defensemen are on the ice the whole time. You know, I mean, you look at the minutes. Okay, so for the Canucks, the highest ice time of any forward, JT Miller, 20 minutes. Almost all, you have 3-year defensemen are playing more than that. And a really good defenseman in a close game is going to be playing 25 minutes, sometimes 27 minutes. And somebody like Hughes, if he can just keep, like, the ability to take dump-ins and turn it into a breakout is so important. It's why Niedermeyer won a couple cups of the Devils and a cup of the Ducks. And Chara. And why Brian Leetch was an MVP in a different era. And Drew Doughty. Chris Letang. Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook. Stanley Cup winning teams. They have killer defense, and they usually have a big workhorse because that person influences so much of the game. They got a really good setup right now. They just need to keep it together and with the right pieces. You're hoping Hughes can develop his defensive game, become a Norris level D-man. Sometimes I think he can, sometimes I think he can't. I was watching him on one play. They had a nice camera setup behind the goalie, and he can get a little bit static. And it was on a goal, and he wasn't really taking anybody. He wasn't really being proactive. I think when the game is in motion, that's when it's best for him. Same thing with Myers, too. Myers is best when the puck's moving around. And when it gets static and they get stuck to their net. And yeah, he can look a bit weak. Oh, I know the phrase glass cannon from RPGs and video games. He's a total glass cannon. He's got the great offensive skill, but he's not going to take up too much punishment, and he can kind of easily get overwhelmed on defense. But again, while he's playing with Ben, I'm going to cut him a lot more slack than I normally would. If he was playing like this with Tanev, I think there's a serious problem with this guy. He's playing with a 6th, 7th defenseman. So, all right. Well, I think that's going to be it for me. Thanks for joining there, Amith, A. I'm going to be doing these post-game streams after Canucks games. And on the odd day, putting up videos. Just discussing anything going on with Canucks, news, and some other ideas like putting together my ideal Canuck roster, sort of like an all-time Canuck full lineup. I think it'd be fun. And yeah, hope to see you again. Thanks for bringing the conversation. It was fun, refreshing. Fun to relive some Mike Milbury moments. Say, no matter how bad you think you have it now, it's never Mike Milbury bad, is it? All right, Amith. Have a good one, man. Yes. Yeah, the lag does make it harder. You know what? That might be a setting on my end. I might be able to change that. And because this isn't because I also stream video games on my other channel, a 90s Kid. So I might be able to change that for next time where it's because we're on normal low latency. Or maybe because this is a new channel, I don't have the option. Oh, there's ultra low latency where you don't get a PVR thing where you're not able to DVR it back, but the latency will be a little. I'll do that next time. Then we can have a real conversation. Get real. All right, Canucks win 3-1. They looked pretty good. almost no complaints. Tyler Mock, get well soon. Bye for now, man.